Hey everyone, hello. So I thought it would be fun today to dive into one of the most eccentric and fascinating characters of our time, Nicolas Cage. Now, we all know Cage for his legendary performances, sometimes brilliant, sometimes bizarre. But what you may not know is that he has a deep and curious connection to voodoo culture. From using voodoo rituals to prepare for a role, to publishing a comic book that places voodoo at its center, to even choosing a pyramid tomb in New Orleans right near the grave of a famed voodoo queen. Nicolas Cage's story is really unlike any other. Cage has always been known for his immersive acting style. He doesn't just play a character, he actually becomes them. But when preparing for his role in 1988 cult classic Vampire Kiss, Cage allegedly took things even further. Reports suggest that Cage researched actual voodoo practices as part of his method acting process. He wanted to capture the raw, unhinged energy of a man who believes he's turning into a vampire. And instead of relying solely on scripts and stage directions, Cage leaned into mystical rituals and voodoo traditions. Now, whether he performed these rituals literally or just symbolically, it adds another layer to his reputation as an actor who will cross boundaries, even the spirited kind, to embody a role. For Cage, voodoo wasn't just folklore. It was a tool to channel altered states of mind and bring something uncanny to the screen. His method acting for Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance, for his role as Johnny Blaze and his demonic alter ego in the 2011 film, Cage developed a nouveau shamanic acting technique inspired by voodoo figures. To embody the character, Cage drew inspiration from Baron Samedi, a spirit of death from Afro-Caribbean voodoo folklore. And to create a frightening aura for his co-stars, Cage would paint his face to look like a skull and even wear black contact lenses. He said he also sewed ancient Egyptian artifacts into his costumes and filled his pockets with stones like onyx and tourmaline to shock his imagination into believing he was a spirit from another dimension. I'm really curious what type of artifacts it was that he had used that he sewed into his costume.
You've developed an acting discipline that you've referred to as nouveau shamanic. Is
Right.
that correct?
Yeah.
What are the core principles?
I've been told that all actors really hail from the early medicine men and the shamans in the villages pre-Christianity, where they would put on masks and act out, and really they were probably pretty crazy, but they would go in and find answers to questions. Today you're called psychotic if you do that. But it's all semantics. So what I would do is I'd put on Afro-Caribbean paint, like a white and black paint, and black out my eyes so I look like this sort of Afro-Caribbean voodoo icon. And then I would sew in bits of Egyptian artifacts that were thousands of years old into my costume and gather some onyx or tourmaline or something that was meant to have vibrations. And who knows if it works or doesn't, but for me it was an idea of like trying to stimulate my mind or trick my mind into believing I was this character from another dimension. And I would walk on the set and then wouldn't speak to anybody, wouldn't say a word, so I projected this aura of horror, which created fear in my fellow actors, which then inspired me to believe I really was this character.
But Cage's connection to voodoo isn't just limited to film. Many people forget that Cage is also a comic book writer and a publisher. In 2002, he co-created a comic book with his son Weston called Voodoo Child. The story is set in post-Hurricane Katrina New Orleans, a city already steeped in mystery, tragedy, and the presence of voodoo traditions. The comic blends themes of magic, revenge, and resurrection, centering on a character brought back from the dead by voodoo powers. This wasn't a one-off gimmick either. The Cage family leaned heavily into voodoo imagery, symbolism, and lore, almost as if it was a personal fascination. For Nicolas Cage, voodoo wasn't just a backdrop, it was a central force in storytelling, a cultural key to unlocking narratives about life, death, and what lies beyond. And then there's the pyramid. In 2010, Nicolas Cage purchased a 9-foot-tall white stone pyramid tomb in New Orleans' famous St. Louis Cemetery No. 1. This cemetery is one of the most historic burial grounds in America. It's also the infernal resting place of Marie Laveau, the legendary voodoo queen of New Orleans. Cage's pyramid stands out with an artifact from another dimension. Etched in front of it are the words Amina ab uno, which in Latin means everything from one. Now, why would Cage choose to build his tomb here? In a cemetery tied so closely to voodoo history? Some speculate it's his way of spiritually anchoring himself in a city where the veil between worlds feels thinner. Others believe Cage sees the pyramid as a timeless symbol of mystery, immortality, and transcendence. Concepts that echo voodoo's own blending of life and death, spirit and body. Whatever the reasoning, Cage's pyramid is not just a grave, it's a statement, a monument that connects him directly to the spiritual legacy of New Orleans, standing in the shadow of Marie Laveau herself. So, let's connect the dots. An actor who embraced voodoo ritual as part of his performance, a writer who places voodoo at the center of his comic book mythos, and a man who has already chosen his eternal resting place next to one of the most famous voodoo queens in history. Nicolas Cage's connection to voodoo isn't coincidence, it's a pattern. It reflects his lifelong obsession with the mythical, the uncanny, and the supernatural. For Cage, voodoo isn't about folklore from New Orleans. It's a living philosophy of transformation, resurrection, and eternal mystery. And in true Nicolas Cage fashion, he hasn't just admired it from a distance. He's woven it into his art, his identity, and even his afterlife. So yeah, that's it for today's video. Nicolas Cage continues to prove that he's not just an actor, but a man whose life is an ongoing performance of mystery and magic. So, if you enjoyed today's video into the strange side of Hollywood, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share this with fellow seekers of the unusual. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. All right, everyone, take care. Peace.